Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. I want to thank Alex Suarez, director of Mantra, for joining us. Really cool psychological thriller. Definitely go check it out. You can rent it on Amazon, as we kind of mentioned in the previous segment. Another movie that you can get on
Crazy
streaming or
third
another
act.
show. What's that?
Crazy third act in that movie.
Crazy third act. It goes
Crazy
bonkers at
third
the
act.
end.
Yeah.
There's no, as Kramer used to say, it's bonkos. Bonkos. Again. Actually, Kramer
In a
didn't
good
say it.
way.
Regis
Bonkers
Philbin
in a
said
good
it.
way.
Yeah. Regis Philbin said it on Seinfeld. It's a whole
Oh
other,
boy.
it's a whole other story.
Oh my
Bonkos.
god. All right.
It's bonkos. All right. Another series, another storyline that is streaming right now that's causing quite a little bit of a stir, I got to be honest with you, online, is Andor. It is the latest incarnation of Star Wars to hit Disney Plus, following I would say an uneven Obi-Wan and usually an uneven Boba Fett and a stellar Mandalorian. Is that a fair assessment of the previous Star Wars shows?
I guess so. I
Right?
would yeah. I mean, it's subjective as to whether it's uneven or not, but I mean, I think I felt it was uneven. So
Yeah.
I would agree with your subjective opinion that it's
Okay.
uneven.
I'm not saying Andor was uneven. I'm just saying that the previous two Andor, Boba Fett was viewed as uneven. Obi-Wan was viewed as uneven. And I think the general consensus Mandalorian has general praise, right? Is that a
The Mandalorian has not outstayed its welcome just yet.
correct?
I mean, but it's fandom, so I mean, it's
right.
There's always a potential. Every season is a potential shark jump. So
Correct.
You know,
Correct. But it's got Baby Yoda. I mean, that's a cash
right.
cow.
And I think people genuinely like the character. I think the character is well established. So as long as they kind of stay true to that character and the struggle of what it's like to be a Mandalorian and keep his faith, and all this other, there's a lot of analogous stuff in it that broadens this perspective even more so than say Boba Fett or even Obi-Wan. I mean, Obi-Wan's been explored, right? So it's he's probably Din Djarin is probably the most intriguing character that they've invented so far. Next to perhaps Andor.
Yes.
But there's stuff about it.
So sometimes having or being under an umbrella is a great thing, right? Because it guarantees you instant success in terms of interest, right? Being under the Star Wars umbrella is great. Like, why wouldn't, if you're a creator, like, why wouldn't you want to create something under Star Wars? Because you're going to instantly get exposure. You're going to instantly get interest. You're going to get viewers, readers, if it's a comic book. It's always seemed to be viewed, at least, on the outside, as being a positive thing. I think, though, Andor is an example of the double-edged sword. Andor, in and of itself, to me, is the best produced Star Wars I've seen, and I've seen in a while, to be honest with you. Not just TV show wise, but I think you could put this up against anything they've done since Disney has acquired it as just top notch. We flashed an image of Obi-Wan there
in the looks department.
No, in everything department, and not just in the looks department. We flashed an image of Obi-Wan, the main villain from Obi-Wan, and it is a cartoon compared to the kind of character development that Andor does. Andor, to me,
don't agree with that, but okay.
I just absolutely the depth of characters in Andor compared to everything else that Star Wars put out. To me, it's mountains to molehills. It is.
I understand.
It is so much deeper. You really get the sense these are three-dimensional characters. They're not caricatures. They're not, well, this is the villain, so we've got to give them, this kind of motivation or whatever. These are complex characters. But the downfall is to it, in terms of the response, both viewership and fandom, is that it doesn't feel like a Star Wars show. And I actually think that's the greatest thing, because quite frankly, I just don't. I'm almost tired of just spitting out carbon copy clones. Oh, see, I put clones in there of stuff we've seen before, putting a Star Wars bow on it. Like, this is an actual attempt at doing something mature, adult, sophisticated. Sophisticated is the word that keeps coming back to me as I'm watching this. This is like watching Succession. Just happens to take place in the Star Wars universe. This is like watching Billions. Just happens to take place in the Star Wars world. You know, this is, to me, really, everyone keeps saying like, "Oh, I want adult Star Wars. I want adult Star Wars." No, you don't, because you're getting it right now, and you're not watching it, and you're complaining that you're not getting it. So that's the way I look at the response to Andor and what I watched. Is it slow to begin? Sure. I thought Game of Thrones was slow through the first 6, 7 episodes. But once you get to
Yeah.
of this season with the heist, it was something that I was eagerly clicking for the next, for the next installment.
Right. I mean, you didn't watch it week to week though. You binged it, right?
I did. I ended up binging.
I
I
think
watched the first 4 or 5 episodes week to week, and binged the last 7.
I think that's probably why your experience of it is more favorable than a lot of other people, because most people kind of just watched it week after week,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's a solid show. I think it's the best looking show. Because that they didn't spend the money on this show that they spent, say, on Rogue One or The Force Awakens, right? But it looks flawless in its, in its depth, in its world building, in its like in the size and scope of the Empire. Um, the scale, the scope of it is very Star Wars. It's more Star Wars than most things that we've seen.
Yeah.
So I think that they finally figured out how to do Star Wars on a television show, on a television budget, right? And make it
Right.
look comparable to the films where these
Yep.
things come from. I would agree with you about the character development. Um but I don't necessarily agree on the show itself. I think the story suffered for the sake of character development. Um, so that they still, in my opinion, still haven't quite mastered the short form storytelling with long form character development. They haven't gotten that down yet, because by the time you finally know exactly who each and every one of these characters are, and what their struggles are,
Mhm.
and what their what the lie that they believe is, and versus the reality of their circumstances and their situations, we're at pretty much the last 2 episodes.
Right.
And the other side of it, and this is not the show's fault, but the other side of it is we're not going to get another season of this for 2 years. So it's a slow show.
Mhm.
Not a lot goes on. Not a lot happens. It's very oriented into the personal tragedy of each and every one of these characters. Which, look, I'm usually for it,
Yeah.
but for some reason, for me, I don't think they dialed up the personal tragedy enough,
Mhm.
and I think they dialed down the action a little too much. I think if they just dialed up the personal tragedy, the action wouldn't have been a problem, right?
Right.
Because you've got you've got the heist, like you say,
Yep. Mhm.
and then the heist leads to the next arc, which is the prison arc, without giving too much away, which is
Right.
and that kind of hits a wall. After you have the high energy of the heist,
Yeah.
you have this sharp come down and this tonal shift
Right.
of the entire season. And then you kind of got to wait to, because basically it's an arc of 3 it's 3 arcs of
Mhm.
3 episodes, right?
Right.
So you have to wait till the 3rd episode for anything to happen. So the first 2 episodes are the setup, this circumstantial change, world building, um character evolution, character escalation, the
Yeah.
action sequences in the 3rd episode. I'm all for it. I just think they need to refine a little better. I think it could have been more of a roller coaster ride, and it didn't need lightsabers. It didn't need anybody with the Force.
Right.
It didn't need TIE fighter and X-wing fighter battles or whatever. Although,
I think that's what people are complaining about. I think
well, it's
when all is said and done, I think that's what people they say they want. I want more adult Star Wars, but they want
mm,
it in the context of a 14-year-old
maybe I don't know. You can't
body.
we can't really speak for them all. I do some of their complaints are of that. I agree with you, but I think if they because look, we don't really know Andor until that last 2 episodes. You don't really see him come to the forefront. You get his pain. He's kind of along for the ride.
Mhm.
He's basically the smartest guy in the room, except for Luthen,
Right.
um, who's basically the smartest guy in the show,
Right.
right? So Andor, next to everybody else, is pretty much the smartest guy in the room, but he's kind of driftwood for every episode up until the third arc, the third episode of the prison
Yeah.
series, where he kind of takes initiative, and then
Well,
then he kind
I
of
thought he showed that pre-heist also, though. I mean, I thought he
but I
actually
mean
showed
the circumstance of the heist caused him to have to do certain things in order to survive, in order to
right.
just kind of get on top of it. In
Mhm.
the prison arc, he actually had to initiate things. He had to
Right.
actually manipulate people, initiate things, use his brain to get out of that, right?
Yeah.
And then yeah, then it kind of drops off again because he's got a tragedy that happens in the third arc, the beginning of the third arc, and then he kind of makes his mind up of who he wants to become and what he wants to do by the season finale.
Right.
But I think Diego Luna did an amazing job in the show. I think he's great. I think he's well earned in the entry into the pantheon of Star Wars characters, along with Han Solo and Din Djarin and then Boba Fett and all these other characters. I think you watch it and you know why the show is named after him. It
Right.
adds a lot more context to Rogue One, which is basically my favorite Disney
Yeah.
Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
So all well done. I think there could have been more though. I
It
think
also Oh,
I
sorry, go
think
ahead.
no, I think there could have been more to him. I think there could have been more to the tragedy of the situation. I think they could have built up. I'm sure they're waiting for season 2. I'm sure there's going to be more of it, but I'm just saying for this particular arc of episodes, it's 9 episodes that we watched.
Yeah.
I think there could have been um, more about him, more about his childhood, more about his personal struggles, and his kind of the deviation between what he believes and what's reality and all that other stuff. I think they could have drummed that up more. I
Mhm.
think if they pushed that more and it was more of an emotional roller coaster for characters without
Yeah.
lightsabers, without TIE fighters and all that stuff, I think less people would be complaining about it.
Yeah.
Um, but before you go,
No, no. Yeah.
I don't give a damn what people are saying because I enjoy the show and I'm looking forward to more. But I understand what they're saying. I get what they mean because watching it from week to week, it was very frustrating. I have not binged it like you did. I will watch it again. I'm sure my opinion of it might alter slightly, but watching
Yeah.
it week to week, I can totally understand people's frustration.
Yeah, I think that I thought about that too as I was watching it. The fact that I could click for the next episode made things speed up
Hmm.
for me, whereas I think the complaint I kept hearing was it's slow. I said, "I don't understand. It's not super
Well,
slow.
it is
It's
not.
very, very
It's not
fast."
slow when you have everything at your
Yeah.
fingertips, but when you have
Um,
to wait a week,
yeah.
when you have that heist, and then suddenly he's in prison, and then you got to wait a week to figure out what he's gonna do
Yeah.
in prison, and then you got to wait another week to figure out if he's gonna get out of the prison. That can
Yeah.
test someone's
The
attention span.
the last point I'm gonna make about this,
Mhm.
because we have a short show tonight
Yep.
because of me, is that I think what I enjoyed the most about this, though, is, to me anyway, it reminded me that the Empire is scary,
Hmm.
that the Empire itself is scary, that if you are, part of a rebellion, it's a war. It reminded me that there's a war in Star Wars. Star Wars,
Which
it's
is
an
which is
iconic
basically what Rogue
title.
One kind of tried to do for the most part, is get you um get you into the spot, the danger, the
Right.
espionage, and the
Right.
kind of, yeah,
And that's something that I wish a lot of shows would remind themselves, because we've talked about this for other shows, other MCU shows, other Disney Plus, other, non-Disney shows. We're living in this age of such meta recognition that we've seen this kind of stuff before, and we're
Mhm.
telling the same stories over again,
Mhm.
which are not a bad thing. It's okay to tell. There's only 5 stories out there. That's the famous quote, right? The famous Mark Twain quote, I think.
Yep.
There's really
Yep.
only 5 stories out there. It's how you tell it. But
Mhm.
I think what this show does that I appreciate is it reminds us that it's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to win, even though we already know what's going to happen with Cassian Andor. But these other characters that we don't know, that we're now being introduced to, I don't know what's going to happen to them, and I'm genuinely concerned for them because the Empire is scary. All right, this has been a short show. Do appreciate Alex Suarez jumping on. We'll dive more into Andor next week. We got a little bit of a bridge before some new stuff hits. So we'll
And
dive
by
a little
then
bit
I will
more.
have binged it, so maybe I'll have a better perspective on it
Yeah,
by
we'll
then.
go all around the road next week. We'll dive into this even further. It'll give folks a chance to catch up as well too, because I know the viewership number's not as high as others. So maybe people coming around to it. So
Yeah,
next
there's a
week
lot more to be said about Andor than what we said just
I
now.
think so. I think so. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Next week, like I said, we'll go all around the rogue. I'm sure something will happen. Some news will come up. We'll
Hopefully
dive
good
into.
news.
We can
Hopefully
even
something
dive into
good.
that Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special that
I
I also
love that.
watched.
I'm sorry. I blew it because
What
I
happened?
enjoyed it. I enjoyed the
Oh boy.
Christmas special. I enjoyed it for the context though, because
All
it
right.
was a spoof on the Star Wars Christmas special, and it's whatever you think about the Guardians Christmas special is better than the Star Wars holiday special by any stretch of the imagination. So
If that doesn't get you coming back here next week, I don't know what is. We will see you guys next week. Hi guys, Mike Dolce here from the Rogue Wave podcast. If you like this video, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It really helps us out. Leave a comment, let us know what you'd like to see in future episodes, and tune in every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, for a brand new episode of the Rogue Wave podcast.